Welcome, everybody, to Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we seek the truth wherever it may lead us. You may get a little uncomfortable in the process. That's the goal. But in the search for truth, sometimes things get a little uncomfortable. Do I have...
What is this on you?
I've got fuzzes all, man. I don't know.
Oh.
I was
going to leave that alone, and that would distract me the whole show, so I'm not going to leave that alone.
Women, you can just never leave well enough alone, right?
All right, you're good to go.
All
Your
right.
camera ready.
Good. I'm glad we solved that. Welcome. I hope everyone's doing. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world on this Wednesday. We've got a lot of news to get to on this show. Of course, we're going to have a discussion here just a little bit about the fallout from the U.S. election, but more generally, we're going to speak about how these warmongers who are now in charge and who will continue to be in charge continue to push foreign wars around the world. There's a new report out tonight that we're going to dive into, which is incredibly troubling, but it's probably it's probably something you guys already knew. How many wars the United States is currently in or has started? Let us know in the chat. Like, if you just vote, how many wars do you think the United States has started, is currently involved with? Of course, this is the deep state at work inside the United States. And you know, I think these elections are just kind of like lipstick on a pig, quite honestly. So
Yeah.
We're going to look at these wars. It's really, really troubling, this new report.
Plus some updates on Russia, and there was an attempted terror attack in the Kherson region, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to be joined by some excellent journalists on the show tonight. George Eliason is going to be joining us from Donbas. Of course, there's some big developments over the last hour as Russian troops are withdrawing. We'll tell you about what's going on there. And we're also going to look at Sean Penn. So proving that all of this is like some sort of Hollywood production. Sean Penn goes to meet with Vladimir Zelensky, and we're not going to give it away. But what he did was just unbelievably odd, and the whole story it's absolutely cringeworthy. So we'll talk about that.
Plus, is math racist? Some math professors are saying, can you leave us out of the woke discussion? We just want to do addition and subtraction. So we leave it to you. Is math a racist pursuit that needs decolonialization? You don't have to solve any algorithms to follow along with this segment. You just have to know, so you have to be enumerate a little bit. So that math quiz, that pop quiz is at the end of the show today. Redacted starts right now.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Wednesday. So we're still picking up and cleaning up the dust if you're living in the United States from this crazy election. And the dust is still settling. There's still a lot of votes still out that need to be counted. There's still a lot of ballots that are showing up. There's some showing up oddly timed ballots.
Well, actually, we are absentee voters, and our ballots said they needed to be postmarked by Election Day yesterday. So if there are any close calls, they'll go to those that may still not have arrived. Not ours, of course. Ours are in the mail well in advance because you have an organized wife.
That's right. We got our Fetterman votes in early. Just joking. So we got our votes in a while ago. And, you know, it's interesting, though, you still have like 800,000 ballots still out in Arizona. You have there's still a lot of races that can still yet to be called. But I think if there's one, to me, there's a couple of big takeaways from yesterday. Number one is that Ron DeSantis is clearly the model for, I think, for Republicans going forward. If they, you know, it's a clear sign. I mean, maybe not, you can disagree with me, but you are in a state, you were in a purple state. I mean, Florida was a purple state. I mean, remember Obama won along the I-4 corridor. So now all statewide offices are now controlled by Republicans in the state of Florida. And DeSantis destroyed Charlie Crist, absolutely destroyed Charlie Crist.
And I was going to say, I agree with you 100%, and which is why I feel like Trump needs to stop bashing. He needs to stop calling him names, because he's going to start losing people over that.
Yes, actually, clearly he's afraid of him, and he feels like he created his own successor, and he did not mean to crown another king behind him. He's still not done with that crown. And so he calls him desanctimonious.
Yeah.
And he said this week that, he better not run because he'll hurt himself very badly.
Well, and Trump's going to make a big announcement. He said he's going to make a big announcement next week. So, I mean, I don't have any dog in this race at all. The only dog I have in this race is the anti-war stance. And
we were given so few candidates for that.
And there was a lot of candidates.
We even know?
Well, there were a lot of candidates that were afraid to come out and be anti-lockdown. There were a few candidates that ran as anti-lockdown and were vehemently anti-lockdown, and those people did well. But the people that were tentative about talking, because they knew it happened under Trump. Mm-hmm. So it would have been like kind of a slam on Trump if they talked anti-lockdowns, and that backfired on them. Like if they would have come out and just been like, you know what, that was a horrible idea. It was dumb. It was absolutely horrible.
We hurt children. We shouldn't have done that.
We should never do it again. That would have gone further, I think. So the people that were timid about talking about lockdowns backfired.
Yeah, it felt very much like no one was held accountable for the pandemic in yesterday's election. And that is the thing that seems to turn my stomach the most, because Democrats were successful in turning this into a single issue around abortion. And to be honest, I'm surprised. Yeah.
I am. And David, what were you going to say? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, do we yet know, or have we heard, because I have no idea where DeSantis falls on war, like where he's at with Ukraine and stuff like that? Has he ever talked about it?
He's kind of tight-lipped about it. That's why some believe that he might be more of a neoconservative than he lets on. I think that question still remains. That's a very big, important question, where he comes down on that issue. But I think that what you're getting to right now is the larger point. Is, to me, that's why I wanted to kind of just tangentially talk about the election. I'm not going to talk about Project Veritas and every little electioneering story and all of this around, because there's still a lot of mess that we're digging through at this hour. So let's just let the votes be counted. Let's let the dust settle. Let's find out who actually wins these races. But the war part of this is the most troubling piece to me. So will anything change? Now, if Nancy Pelosi is no longer the Speaker of the House and Chuck Schumer retains the Senate, does anything change? Or does Mitch McConnell win the Senate as Speaker, as Senate Majority Leader, and Kevin McCarthy is House Majority Leader? Does anything change? Anything at all? Do we pull back all of this money to Ukraine? Do we stop these foreign wars? Let me know in the chat. Do you think anything changes from this move?
We are business owners. And from a business perspective, we at least know that taxes are not going to go up from here on out, because Democrats are not going to be able to push any tax cuts that they had tried to when they actually did have power. So, if you're the kind of person who doesn't like high tax bills, there we go. We know that. Zishan,
thank you for your super chat. Zishan says, I can't stand behind DeSantis until I understand his foreign policy stance. And that's absolutely, I agree with you.
Fair enough.
You can.
I'll let single issues go. Like I will, where they stand on, maybe abortion, or where they stand on certain things, I can let that kind of thing go. But war is something I am vehemently against, and therefore I cannot back a candidate that is pro-war.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. That, to me, that supersedes everything else, right? And now with these COVID lockdowns and sovereignty, are you going to cede power from the United States to the World Health Organization, to the World Economic Forum? Like, are you going to give over sovereign power of the United States like Biden has? Mm-hmm. So will we continue to do this, or will we say no more? Enough is enough. We are. It's going to be an America First policy. You're seeing France, the foreign minister, the finance minister of France today come out and say this Build Back Better Inflation Reduction Act in the United States is screwing us in France, and we need to be pulled out of this thing now.
In fact, the entire European Union is considering litigation over it.
Yeah, because it's screwing other people, and so this is the thing: can France take care of itself? Can the United States take care of itself? So. Anyway, those are some of my just like high level takeaways today, and these individual races, we'll see them come together over the next few days. So there's a lot of moving pieces tonight. We have a daily newsletter that we've been covering, and I heard from a lot of you that said let's let the dust settle, let's wait these races out, and wait until we see these 800,000 votes that are still outstanding in Arizona and other places. So we will continue to follow that in the daily newsletter. If you go to redacted.inc, put in your email address, and you'll receive the newsletter newsletter first thing in the morning. We just passed a new milestone with signups. So thank you to all of you who love the newsletter. I get to read your emails back every morning when you say you love the newsletter. So thank you so much for signing up. And you can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes over your cup of coffee. A lot of hard work.
Well,
Natali does a lot of great writing.
I just want to say, yeah, she does. And I got to say, it's like it's a newsletter, but it has personality. And that's like rare. Usually you get people that just tell these stories or whatever, but you can totally feel the personality. And that's why it is something that I know I'm the producer of the show, but even if I wasn't, I would read that thing every single day.
I'm glad for that.
Kudos,
Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Hopefully you feel like you're spending your morning with me, but you don't have to hear my voice. It's my voice, right?
Yeah.
So.
Pros and cons.
Yes, exactly. Get a break from this. Clayton needs plenty of them. This is your reminder that we are a married couple.
Yes.
If that sort of me picking lint off of him at the beginning of the show didn't give it all away already, we are married. David and Philip, our producers, are brothers. And so this is a family show.
Yeah.
Although Clayton used to have a co-anchor, I won't say who it was, who would touch his arm even though they were not married. And I wanted to slap her every time I saw that when he was on the air. And she would always like touch his arm and I would be like, do that again. I dare you. I'm allowed to touch him. You're not. So get a little mama bear over there.
Like to make the girls jealous. That's what we do.
Girl fight.
Hey, Silver Wolf.
I'll let you, if anybody here watched Clayton when he was on Fox, you can guess who it was and I will not confirm.
Silver Wolf just became a new member up on our big screen. You can, when you subscribe to the channel or when you provide super chats during the show, they will pop right up here. So without further ado, we've got a lot of news to get to. Let's start with a bombshell new report just released showing what we probably already knew, but we didn't have it in black and white, which is the United States is secretly waging wars around the world using post 9/11 loophole laws that are specifically designed to allow them to just willy-nilly deploy troops wherever the hell they want to and wage secret wars. I think maybe if there's one mission this show has, it's to expose this story, to expose these deep staters, these imperialists for what they are, and expose these types of stories. And so when I saw this report, we'll get to the report in a second, it really just speaks to the desperation of the American hegemony right now. Now, you might have seen this meme floating around, and it's funny because it's true. Just look at this. American geologists looking for oil. And that, I think, sums it up. So almost all of these stories involve some sort of a natural resource, oil at the heart of it, but natural resources in general. And this is what we now use our military for. Instead of defeating the Third Reich, right now we use it to infiltrate and overtake other countries in order to exploit their resources. And we pretend that we're doing it under the guise of democracy when in fact we are arming and supporting terrorists. Like in Syria, we are actively arming Al-Qaeda. And we know it. And you know it. And it's been reported in major publications. And the people of Syria know it. That's just one example. The New York University School of Law's Brennan Center for Justice details how all of this comes together in a new, and what they say is about the Department of Defense has been allowed to covertly deploy troops and wage secret wars over the past 2 decades in dozens of countries across the globe. It really is a damning report that should be the top story, I think, on every major nightly news network, but it won't be. And every major newscast, maybe even around the world, but it won't be. Flip on the BBC, you're not going to see it. Flip on NBC Nightly News, you're not going to see it. But don't worry, because the United States media, of course, are controlled by the deep state intelligence cabal. So they don't want you to know this. They don't want this story out there. And that's why we need to shine a light on it. So here's the report. It's called Secret War, How the U.S. Uses Partnerships and Proxy Forces Under the Radar. And it's an amazing read. I encourage all of you to read it separately, but I'm going to go through some of the high-level pieces of this. We can have a discussion about it, all of us. So here's the introduction. Afghanistan, Iraq, maybe Libya. If you ask the average American where the United States has been at war in the past 2 decades, you would likely get this short list. But the list is wrong. Can you guys in the chat we'll come back to this in a second, but can you guys in the chat, like if probably people say Iraq, Afghanistan, maybe Libya. They're right. I even think Libya might not even be on that list. I think for most people it would be Afghanistan and Iraq.
I wouldn't have said Libya. I would have said Iraq, Afghanistan, and that probably would have been it on my list if you would have asked me, before.
Yeah.
So I saw somebody in chat answer what my answer would have been, and that was all of them. I can't. Well, and I know that it sounds like I'm being, like facetious, but no, literally, I can't think of a single war that is waging on the earth that the United States is not somehow, some way involved in.
That they're like, let's let that one play itself out. We're going to sit that one out. No, that's not the American.
I mean, even frickin' Armenia and Azerbaijan, Nancy Pelosi has to fly in there and stick her neck in there.
Yeah.
I mean, just everything. You're absolutely right about it. And now we want to do this on the moon, by the way, against China for moon bases. So again, not even on Earth, we want to start these wars. So let me know in the chat how many, and just you name the different countries in the chat. I want to see how many of you guys get them. Anyway, so Afghanistan, Iraq, and maybe Libya. If you ask the average American where the United States has been at war over the past 2 decades, you would likely get this short list, but this list is wrong. It's off by at least 17 countries in which the United States has engaged in armed conflict through ground forces, proxy forces, or airstrikes. It's incredibly troubling.
Yes.
For members of the public, the full extent of the U.S. war making is unknown. You don't know about it. They don't want you to know about it. If you knew about it, there would be a revolt. You can't pay for gasoline.
Like we saw in Vietnam. Think about Vietnam. They showed, soldiers coming home. They showed caskets. They showed the brutality of war, and they got so many people that revolted against it. And then they did a little bit of it in Iraq, but then they decided, well, you know what? This time around, let's not do that because it got people up in arms. And so they just completely shut that down, and now they show nothing.
Well, yeah, in Iraq specifically, there's a number of reporters who were told and who are now have come forward later that when they arrived in Baghdad, they were embedded with different military groups, Marines, etc. And they were told, no cameras over here. You can only film this. You can't show this. You can't show these people being hurt, and none of it. It was like totally whitewashed and totally blocked. Now, according to the Cradle, quoting now, among the nations in West Asia affected by these so-called security cooperation authorities, so they have what's known as a security cooperation authority that they get to use for these wars. Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. So they, under this auspice of security cooperation authority, they get to then, be able to go in and have an effect in those 4 countries. However, they also include many African and Latin American nations, known as the Security Cooperation Authorities. They were passed by the U.S. Congress in the years following the September 11th attacks. So this is at the heart of it. It's all post 9/11. And they are a continuation of the 2001 Authorization for Use of Military Force, or the AUMF, which is a piece of legislation that has been stretched by 4 successive governments, the Cradle points out. And now, according to the report, the authorization to use military force covers a broad assortment of terrorist groups, the full list of which the executive branch long withheld from Congress and still withholds from the public. So they wouldn't give it to Congress. It's like us asking for the Pfizer documents. We'll give them to you in 75 years. So they withhold this from Congress, and still to this day, the American people are not allowed to see the list of people that we are actively going after and killing. What? Why don't we ever talk about this when these people run for Congress? So people want to talk about, Fetterman does this and Dr. Oz did that, whatever. I don't give a rat's ass at the end of the day. This is the shit that matters, where people are being killed using U.S. taxpayer dollars around the world.
Mm-hmm. And American lives are being put at stake for something that we have not had an opportunity to buy into.
Yeah.
And that's what really pisses me off. I really wish that they would have something on your tax form where you could opt into the war tax. Because the thing is, like, you are inadvertently, when you pay your taxes, you're supporting this. You are sending your money to kill people around the world. And I wish that if they wanted to know how the American people really felt about war, if they had a tick box and they said, do you support military? Click yes. I guarantee you that would be a low number.
Well, I remember there was a little kid who, like, under George W. Bush, like, he knew that the country was hurting. And so he saved up his allowance and he brought it like in a jar or something. And he gave his allowance to George W. Bush to help the America's debt problem. Mm-hmm. And I think they ended up like writing it in a check format and giving it to him. And it was like $17 or something. Like this little kid saved up his hard-earned money and then handed it over to George W. Bush. And I remember thinking, my God,
that kid
man.
today has 3 jobs and can't afford the gas to get to work.
Right. Or hopefully
That's
that
America.
Hopefully that little kid grew up to be a journalist, an independent journalist, and is exposing the lies of these people. I mean, maybe, just maybe. Meanwhile, so the Cradle says the executive branch long withheld from Congress and still withholds from the public. But this next piece is amazing on training and equipping. Following in this tradition, the security cooperation authorities being abused by the Pentagon are Section 333 and Section 1227E of Title 10 of the United States Code. Now, this section authorizes the U.S. Army to train and equip foreign forces anywhere in the world, while the other section authorizes the Pentagon to provide support for foreign forces, paramilitaries, and private individuals who are in turn supporting U.S. counterterrorism operations. And they have a spending limit for those individuals up to $100 million per fiscal year.
Where is that? Like, where does that fall in the Constitution? Like our right to do that,
or the federal budget?
No, this is extra. These are like the extra governmental crap that gets shoved in there that we don't ever see. We don't get to see about it. We don't get to vote on it. It's already here. It's just built into this Security Cooperation Authority code after 9/11. And so we can funnel money to anyone who provides support to foreign forces, paramilitaries, and private individuals. So we can literally fund. That's how we're paying for Al-Qaeda in Ukraine right now to fight against Russia and ISIS, paying them $2,500 a month to go fight in Ukraine. We've covered that story here on the show. Where does that money come from? There you go. Again, quoting the Cradle. However, thanks to the vague definition of support and training in the text of this report, these laws, both Section 333 and Section 127, have been used and abused to target adversarial groups under a strained interpretation of constitutional self-defense. They have also allowed the U.S. Army to develop and control proxy forces that fight on behalf of and sometimes alongside their own. So we can have Al-Qaeda fighting alongside American forces. Like, that's how this works under this code. As a result of this, in dozens of countries, these programs have been used as a springboard for hostilities, with the Pentagon often declining to inform Congress or the United States public about their secret operations under the reasoning that the incidents are too minor to trigger statutory reporting requirements.
What?
They're too minor. So we don't want to bother you with these things.
I mean, shouldn't any bullet fired require reporting requirements?
You would think, but no. This just, when a police officer files a bullet, they have to go then write up a whole report.
Yes.
Right? And it will take them all night to file a report. They hate the paperwork.
Each individual bullet. Like, it's every single bullet they fire.
Yeah, not the military.
Like, has to be accounted for.
Not this.
No, not the military.
And not even in this situation where you get to then hire proxies to do your work, so you don't have to file any paperwork at all. Mm-hmm. You can just do this through contractors. But we don't know what they're firing. We just gave them the weapons. They may or may not be going after Assad's government. We don't know. They might have killed some civilians. We don't know. We can't really be accountable. I'm just a caveman lawyer. I can't really tell you about this.
And if the web of power is dispersed enough that people are making only decisions, but not holistic ones, not based on knowledge of everything, then these things can continue to happen at the behest of very few.
Right. Researchers and reporters uncovered in Section 127 programs not only in Afghanistan and Iraq, but also in Cameroon. Was Cameroon on anyone's list? Was Egypt on anyone's list?
I've never even heard of Cameroon.
Was Kenya on anyone's list? Lebanon, Libya, Mali, Mauritania, Nigeria, Somalia, Syria, Tunisia, Yemen. All of them.
I had most of them on my bingo card.
You had them all on your where's U.S. war bingo card?
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. So, this idea of, they're for protection and democracy is just total garbage. Vladimir Putin this weekend has our card. He knows exactly what the United States is up to. He's not falling for it, and neither is China. This is what This is what Vladimir Putin said about this Western democracy and this plundering of resources. This is how the West has enriched itself. Watch.
Какова ситуация с этим на сегодняшний день? Потому что в значительной степени тот уровень благосостояния, который достигнут в бывших колониальных державах, он основан на ограблении.
So the level of prosperity that the West has achieved is largely due to the plunder of the African continent. This is well known. Even policymakers in Europe don't hide this, he says.
Они говорят, на горе и страданиях.
It is because of the suffering of the African continent, not in full, but in large part, that prosperity of colonial powers came to be. It's an evident fact. Resource robbery and the slave trade. Yeah. And the plundering of the African continent. That's how it came to be. Even Europe doesn't hide this, he says. So a few hours ago in Syria, once again, just an extension of this same report, an extension of all of this, explosions overnight. The U.S., of course, and Israeli, we're unclear at this hour if it's Israeli drones or U.S. drones. They're all one and the same. It doesn't really matter. All acting in the same exact way, imperialists. Attacks on Syria-Iraq border leave 15 people dead. Large explosions ripping through the outskirts of the Al-Bukamal area following airstrikes launched near the Syrian-Iraq border. Crossing the eastern countryside, a 22-tanker convoy, 22 tankers filled with oil, destroyed. This gas, oil and gas, was being brought from Iran, was crossing into Syria from Iraq when the United States was bought from Iran, was crossing into Syria from Iraq when U.S. or Israeli regime drones attacked the first two of the tankers and destroyed them. At least 15 people who were nearby the blast site are confirmed to have been killed. And again, these are just some of the images of it. And you see, like, as well, that there are additional explosions from these tankers. And this oil was going to help the Lebanese people. This oil was going to make sure that the people have oil in a time when we have absolutely destroyed the country of Lebanon.
Wait, how do we know that it was going into Lebanon?
It's been confirmed.
That it was only crossing through Syria then.
Right. So, well, we got some confirmation because I sat down and spoke with Kevork Almasian, who is one of the great journalists in the world. He is Syrian. He spoke to me this afternoon from Berlin, Germany. He's been following the story very closely, the plundering of Syrian oil and what happened with these explosions. Here's Kevork. Attacks overnight on these oil tankers.
Actually, there is a very powerful Arabic saying, when Syria gets cold, Lebanon also sneezes. And since the eruption of the war in Syria and the deterioration of the economic situation in Syria itself, this has also reflected negatively on Lebanon. Lebanon declared that it's a bankrupt state just a few months ago, and the banking system has collapsed, and also they have a very severe energy crisis there. Therefore, Lebanon has few options. They have to either import it from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or they have to import it from Iran. And actually, Qatar and Saudi Arabia aren't providing Lebanon with these materials. So the parties or the political blocs in Lebanon that are aligned with Iran, they are bringing free fuel, free gas and free fuel from Lebanon, from Iran, and Iran isn't charging for this fuel, I would say. But the side that is discussing or negotiating with the Iranian side is the Lebanese Hezbollah. And as we may know, Israel and the United States, they consider Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. But Hezbollah in Lebanon is considered a resistance group. And it is the legitimacy of Hezbollah comes from the government of Lebanon that approves the activities of Hezbollah in this regard. And it just yesterday, the tankers, I think there were around 20 tankers full of oil coming from Iran to Iraq, and from Iraq there is a border crossing near Al-Deir al-Zor or near Abu Kamal, and this area has been targeted by when Biden came to power, just a few days after he came to power, and they struck few convoys as well, because this is the only lifeline of Syria that can connect Syria to Iraq and from Iraq to Iran. And yesterday, these tankers were targeted. There are over also 20 people died. Some of them are Iranian, some of them are Lebanese. The American side denies the involvement of its air force in the attacks. And personally, because I followed this situation for a very long time, I haven't seen ones that the United States denied the involvement in these strikes. So this keeps an open question: who did these strikes?
Was it Israeli?
That's a high probability, because the Israeli side refused to comment on this issue, and they refused to give any statement or say we are responsible for this. Therefore, the accusations probably is going towards Israel and not towards the United States, because the United States isn't shy to strike anything, any moving object or any moving person in Syria, and they would just say, oh, these people that we targeted or these objects that we targeted were Iranian-affiliated objects or Iranian-affiliated forces, etc., etc. So they always have the excuse for that. Now that the United States is denying its involvement, I would say the Israelis targeted it, because at the end of the day, Hezbollah, who is bringing this fuel into Lebanon, they are easing the economic situation in Lebanon and for the Lebanese people. And Israel and the United States, they want to keep this situation right now. They want to keep the economic hardship in Lebanon until the election, because the Lebanese president, Michel Aoun, who was aligned with Hezbollah, his term is now over, and Lebanon has to elect a new president. And since Michel Aoun, the Christian quote-unquote president, came to power, who is an ally of Hezbollah, Lebanon has lived has been going through a very difficult economic situation, partly because of the sanctions against Syria, but also because of the American policy in Lebanon itself. So when the American administration or the Israelis want to keep the economic situation very dire, because they want to send a signal that if you vote for a president again, or choose or elect a president again who is aligned with Hezbollah, this is your fate. This is how this economic situation is going to be. Therefore, the alternative, or who the Americans want to elect, is a person called Samir Jaja, and he's a very radical right-wing, and I personally would call him a fascist as well. He was in jail for a very long time because he has committed war crimes and very horrendous crimes during the Lebanese civil war. He was the head of a militia in Lebanon. He committed acts of genocide against the Palestinians, against the Syrians, and any Muslims there.
This is who the U.S. wants.
Yes, because this guy is very, I would say, charismatic. Yes, I would not deny that, and he is always he's pro-Israeli, he's pro-Saudi Arabia, and he wants to cut relations of Lebanon with Iran. He wants to deny Hezbollah for its activities, whether it's against Israel or any other activities. So this is their preferred candidate for the Lebanese presidency.
Kevork, what about the Syrian people and the oil? Of course, we talking about the Americans continuing. There was a meme floating around. We just showed it on the show that American soldiers are, the meme of Americans walking through the desert with guns is American geologists, soldiers. But of course, they are not. And we're still continuing to steal the oil in Syria. Is that still unfolding at this hour? Are American soldiers still? We know that a new base apparently is being opened as well. So the pilfering of oil and resources continues in Syria.
Clayton, the American forces aren't stealing the Syrian oil. They are guarding the Syrian oil. Right. They're guarding the oil fields, just looking that no one from the Syrians can use the oil. Unfortunately, there are so many military posts, I would say. They're not like a military bases. There are so many military posts for the American occupation forces in Syria. And they are just making sure that this oil and the fuel isn't going to the Syrian people. And this is the policy of the United States. The regime change has failed. Regime change policy has failed in Syria. Now they want to strangle the Syrian people so that they get rid of Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria. They want the people to rise against the president because he's unable to provide the basic necessities for them, right? So this is the policy. I think it will fail. And the shift in the mood in Syria is also related to the Ukraine war nowadays. They're betting that if Russia comes out of this war and there is a unipolar system, Syria will also be part of this unipolar system, because the failure of the American policy in the region started or basically in Syria after 2011, because before that, Iraq was the president was removed. In Libya, it was removed, and other places also through this so-called Arab Spring. But Syria, it was a big failure. So I think the Americans have no future in Syria. They can stay here for a year or two, but on the long term, there is no vision for the Americans. What are they going to do? Are they going to stay in Syria and they guard the Syrian oil? Because at the end of the day, if this will happen, the Syrians, or with the help of allies, they can also organize a resistance against the American occupation forces, and they're not wanted there. The areas that they live, the American forces on the eastern shore of the Euphrates, they're unwelcome there. And every time we can see the videos of them, people are throwing stones on the American forces. They're asking them to leave. But in this regard, see how the United States is trying to block the access of the Lebanese to the Iranian fuel, for example. It's the same policy here. It's just harming the people, the politicians, the leaders, or anyone in the government. If you go to Syria or Lebanon and go to their offices, they're warm, they have all their food, they have all their necessities. It's only the people suffering from these issues, right? Therefore, I would say this policy is slowly killing the people in the region. Physically, mentally, psychologically, and it's driving the people into the brink of desperation. And therefore, we see a very big influx nowadays also for Syrians are leaving the country, although the war is technically now is paused, but because of the hard situation, lots of people, especially the educated people, are leaving to the Gulf countries, to the Emirates, to Qatar, to Bahrain, to other countries. And this is also draining Syria from its from the people that can reconstruct the country and the people who can rebuild the country, right? So it's a very, I would say, deadly policy, and there is no sight. I cannot see that the United States will change this policy in Syria in the near future. The only way for the Americans to change course is now to lose the war in the proxy war in Ukraine, or the Syrians to organize an armed resistance against the American forces to kick them out of the country. There is no other way.
So sad, so sad. Thank you to Kevork for joining us on that. And, U.S. officials had said recently that the only way to rid Lebanon of Hezbollah is for the country to fall into complete collapse in order to be rebuilt from the ashes. And so apparently they fooled the Lebanese into thinking that Iranian fuel deliveries would be allowed or permitted, according to a report. And no. So they thought, okay, these fuel deliveries are going to come. They're going to be allowed. These people are suffering. And then as soon as they start rolling, 22 tankers start rolling, they bomb them and destroy them. Like, this is what we're doing there. Absolutely disgusting. So again, the Pentagon exploiting these 9/11 laws, these post 9/11 laws, to wage all of these secret wars. And none of this was on the ballot. This is like why it's so frustrating for the election night last night.
I know, because we've just passed our time where we could make it known that we're not for killing other people. And nobody, and it was convenient that we just instead argue about women's rights, or what is a woman, or
drag shows.
Drag shows in schools, or, all of these other distracting things while people continue to.
And look, that's not to say that, culturally those things aren't incredibly important, right? The destruction of our children, right? That's absolutely important.
Sure.
However,
but we find the time to talk about those things as a broader issue.
Yeah.
While also, we always sort of lead the show off with, like, who are we? Advocating for
safety and shelter.
Live.
Yes, food, safety, and shelter. And when you have the United States hegemony rolling into your country, destroying your country, it's really, really awful. So thanks to Kevork for joining us. We've got more news to get to here on this Wednesday. We're going to look at the very latest in Russia, as Kherson is now appearing to fall. The Russian forces are pulling out of Kherson, and they've been doing this over the past few weeks and getting the civilians out of there. So we will bring you the very latest. George Eliason, one of the great journalists in the world, is going to be joining us from Donbas on that story, plus the terrorist attack that was foiled by Russians in Kherson. And what does this mean for Vladimir Putin's invasion? in the next few weeks as the ground freezes over. So we'll talk to George about that. We're also going to talk about...
Well, meanwhile, I know this war seems like it's really heating up, but President Zelensky has time for celebrity meet and greets still, and we're going to bring you the latest one of those and the cringeworthy moment that comes along with it.
Yeah, we're also going to talk about whether or not math is racist. We'll just hang it out there. We'll just hang it out there and let you know whether or not math is racist or not. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Shopify, because when you feel like you need to get some sales, your business might be a little sluggish, well, that's where you need to turn to Shopify, because you can discover and build an e-commerce platform, and you can start it, run it, and grow it right from the ground up. Very, very easy to do. Now, we built our new Redacted store right on Shopify. So that was the thing when we were all as a team coming together saying, hey, we wanted to build, because everyone was asking us, how can we get Redacted hoodies and t-shirts? And we wanted to get those ready for Christmas time. We built it on Shopify. So we're doing some final tweaks on it, and we're about to roll it out, make it official. But it makes it so simple. You can buy and sell from anywhere right now with Shopify, whether it's selling shoes, whether it's selling anything you want, digital products, it doesn't matter. But we're selling mugs and different shirts, and it's all plug and play. Very, very easy to do.
Hair ties.
You can, sell hair ties, robes, it doesn't matter.
Packs of gum.
Every minute, new sellers around the world make their first sale with Shopify, and you can too. It's very, very simple. Very simple to get started and sign up right now. Shopify covers all the sales channels to successfully grow your business, from an in-person point of sale system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. They have 24/7 support and free on-demand business courses. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can take their courses and learn and get set up. And it's easy to get set up with their team. Very, very easy. Very easy to get started. All right, so here's what I want you to do. You can sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/redacted. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/redacted to start selling online today. That's shopify.com/redacted. Our thanks to a lot of moving pieces right now in Ukraine. Of course, over the past few days, we heard from the United States side that they were actively pushing the Ukrainian government and Volodymyr Zelensky towards peace talks. Then we heard from Zelensky, no peace talks. And then Moscow confirmed, no, there's been no talk of peace. And then in the past 24 hours, we've been hearing that Zelensky is open to peace talks. So we'll talk about that. There is also a foiled terrorist attack that unfolded in Kherson. 9 Ukrainians have been captured by Russian forces. So what was that terrorist attack all about? Is it similar to what we saw along the grain corridor, or maybe the Nord Stream pipeline attacks? Maybe the assassination of Daria Dugina. All of those questions we have for today. We want to bring in one of the finest journalists in the world, George Eliason. He's an independent journalist, American, living in Donbas for, I think, more than a decade, if I'm not mistaken, George. Yep. He's just been doing incredible reporting during this war. He's one of the few journalists that I trust, and I want to bring in George now to talk about all of that and more. George, welcome to Redacted.
Thank you for having me, Clayton. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. So first, I guess a couple of things. Let's talk about what do we know about this terrorist attack? This unfolded over the past 24 hours in Kherson. And it seems like the attacks, at least in the Donbas, in Donetsk, in those areas, have intensified over the past few weeks. And a lot of wondering whether Russian President Vladimir Putin is going to launch this massive offensive. Are they waiting for the ground to freeze? So first of all, what do we know about this terrorist attack, and what are the latest developments in the Donbas where you live?
Well, it's not a specific attack. What they were doing was going to target the administration officials in Kherson. So, an exact point of attack wasn't established, but the materials for that were. They got all the explosives, detonators, all the materials for that. It's not as uncommon as you think, and it hasn't just started. This has been going on for quite a while over time. The reason for Kherson right now, where things are stepping up, is because of the midterms in the United States and the possible switch over in government. They need to get a big victory, or they need to get into a lot of trouble. And I'm talking about Ukraine. So this is one way they can soften up people's resolve to resist an attack and grab headlines. The entire time, now we're looking at since 2014, so we're looking at 8 years going on 9 now. This has been always about terrorist attacks here. It's very rare that the Ukrainians attack military formations. And, it sounds, pretty odd for, they've been at war for almost 9 years, but they've been concentrating on civilian structures, apartments, schools, hospitals, maternity wards are a favorite. What do you exclude or include as a terrorist attack at that point?
Right.
From where do you go from there? I guess there's restrooms on the Kerch Bridge. They found grenades in one of those. So what we're looking at isn't really a step up in terms of intensity. They're just increasing the breadth of the attacks.
So you've seen attacks continue over the past couple of weeks. We've been covering the mounting attacks in Donetsk. What can you tell us about the attacks? And it seems like you're seeing, are they more intense over the past couple of weeks?
The frequency a bit, like I said, it's to grab news right now. If the Republicans gain the House and the Senate, they can't afford to lose support. And that's what this is about. Now, you asked about the peace negotiations. It's the same thing. Since 2015, Minsk was on the table. And Ukraine signed that Minsk agreement under Poroshenko, then rejected it. They never implemented it. But every time they needed to grab headlines, they were negotiating peace again. And following that, there was another major attack. So this is probably the prelude to, something large.
When you say something large, what do you mean? A major mobilization or actual peace? Because to me, it could go either way, right? Large to me would be, wow, we could have peace, or the 300,000+ troops that Putin has amassed ready to go. That's the large part.
Well, think of it this way, a dirty bomb. That's large in terms of media impact.
Right.
All right. That's large. Blame it on Russia, which isn't going to have them. This is big in terms of, I guess, foreshadowing a big mobilization on Ukraine's part. They've decided they need to take Kherson. And Ukraine, once again, is ready to sacrifice all these soldiers, whatever soldiers they have left. And, I'm putting it in those terms because more and more and more, the actual military aspect of Ukraine is coming from outside Ukraine. They suffered so many casualties, it's just crazy at this point, and they don't care. They need to keep this war going.
And the United States appears to be doing that. We've been covering on the show. We've had Colonel Douglas McGregor on talking about the one-star general that was going to be put in place of this Ukrainian command. That now has upped to a 3-star commander. A 3-star general is now being put in place for the dispersion of weapons and command in Ukraine. So the United States is ramping up on that side, and it seems to be in keeping with what you're saying here, maybe trying to score a major victory in Kherson or some other spot to show back home that, hey, we're actually winning. We're actually doing something. All of your money going into Ukraine is being used for something.
No, exactly. And, this isn't, this is developing. I haven't seen anything to confirm it yet, but they're on a timetable for the next couple of weeks in Kherson to actually kick things up. The reason they need Kherson is they need to get close enough to Crimea to lob artillery at it and rockets. It puts them in range.
So you see ramped up attacks. If Kherson is then captured, then launching attacks into Crimea.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's what they would do.
And so what will the Russian response be? I mean, we've been hearing about this 300,000+ mobilization, which continues in ready to go. Colonel McGregor has told us on our show it's a couple of more weeks there until it seems that the ground would be frozen enough for them to launch this. It just seems odd. I mean, it's from someone from the outside watching and seeing Vladimir Putin sitting back, going to different conferences and giving different speeches, and seeing all of these attacks ramping up throughout the Donbas. Putin's not sitting back. I mean, maybe that appears that way. Are the Russians just sort of sitting back and waiting, or are we seeing an equal attack back and forth at this level?
Well, they're sitting back right now.
Okay, they are. Okay.
The MacArthur McGregor, is exactly right about the soil conditions here. It's been raining and raining and raining. And if you try to run tanks over these soils, you're going to end up digging out a meter of mud.
Wow. Every
time you go to move. It's just, that's what the conditions are like. Topsoil here goes down probably 3 meters. You're looking at 12 feet in some conditions. It's really, really deep black earth. So the military aspect of this during the spring and during the fall, it makes it very, very difficult. Winter months, and the only thing he's not quite right about is the timeline, because it's going to take, they're not expecting the first real frost here, and that's not a deep frost, that's just surface, for probably another 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And then after that, I mean, you still need time for that frost to settle in. So you'd be looking at towards the middle of December, possibly as late December, before it's actually, great conditions. Now, I don't think Russia's going to wait that long. The mobilization that they're doing right now is, 300,000 troops, equipping them, making sure they're trained, making sure that you have the support there, okay, all the way back. So, food, clothing, etc. It's a lot of work. Getting them into place, it's a lot of work. And then you have the turnout, because the troops there are more than likely leaving. So it's a complete changeover. Even that takes time. And for that kind of number, it's, not a day or a week, but a couple of weeks in itself. The troops need to get, the lay of the land, etc. So, now we're looking into December.
So we didn't have a red wave in the United States like Republicans had hoped for. It looks like the Senate will remain in Democrat control. Republicans will take the House of Representatives. President Biden's still in power. So and Mitch McConnell will likely then become would not become the Senate Majority Leader. Still, that retains power for Chuck Schumer on Chuck Schumer's side. So there is this deadlock, but there is this agreement, of course, between both of these parties, these warmongering parties, to continue to flood Ukraine with weapons and money. So we've been hearing about peace talks. The U.S. and Russia to hold nuclear talks. That's one piece from the State Department. But actual peace talks, Zelensky now saying that they are open to peace talks. What have you make of that from where what you're hearing on your side?
Zelensky absolutely doesn't want peace talks. He set his condition for peace talks himself. Ukraine has to Russia has to take their army and go back to Russia. Crimea and Donbas have to be returned to Ukraine, and then he'll discuss terms. That's his concession.
And that won't happen.
Well, you've got the fact that, you have 2 independent republics here now. Whether Ukraine likes it or not, neither republic is ever going back to Ukraine, especially not after the treachery the Ukrainians committed against them.
Right.
Think of it this way. You've got a sitting president, okay, whether you like him or not, okay, he's voted in. There's a coup, he's ousted. Now, your entire region still supports the president that was elected. So then all these tanks start coming down. People are being murdered all over the place, okay? And they're telling you have to accept this political thought of the same people that killed your grandfathers and grandmothers under Adolf Hitler. And that's all you have to do, is deny everything in your family's history was good, and you can be a part of Ukraine again.
Unbelievable. Well, George, we want to have you back on. I know we're going to do a deep dive a little bit later on your latest revelations about the Nord Stream pipeline. We're going to have you back on real soon. I wanted to thank you for joining us today, though, to bring us the very latest on these peace talks, the mobilization, and all of that. Where can people find out your writings and production of videos as well, and your journalism, George?
Oh, gosh. A lot of the sites were actually taken down because of the info war. YouTube, just George Eliason. I've got a show on TNT Radio. As far as writing, the best place to go is Muckrack. Unfortunately, a lot of the articles you have to put in the Wayback Machine because the sites are gone. Some of them were top 50 sites worldwide, and they destroyed them. So, it is what it is right now.
Right. Well, we'll link that up in our show description. George Eliason, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us here on Redacted.
Thank you so much for having me, Clayton.
My pleasure. And thanks to George, one of the great journalists. And it's so amazing. Like, he does this amazing reporting, and he gets blocked, censored, can't find his articles. They block it everywhere on these websites. But some reporting that we wanted to bring you, because just over the past few hours, this is still a fluid situation, but the Ministry of Defense in Russia is now officially saying that Russia is pulling its troops out of the frontline city of Kherson. And this, of course, has been unfolding for the past few weeks, moving civilians out of the area. Now, get ready for the media spin tomorrow morning, guys. Wake up and flip on CNN and read your Washington Post and read your New York Times. And the way that the Western media is, of course, going to spin this is that this is a major victory for Ukraine.
Or they will call it a retreat, that they are retreating.
Russia retreats.
Yes, absolutely. Without mentioning that by some estimates, Ukraine has lost 12,000 soldiers in October alone, by some reports. Russia says that they have losses too, but they're trying to actually minimize those losses by this withdrawal, and that their losses in October, according to Russian reports, are 7 to 8 times lower.
Yeah, and so already around 115,000 people had been evacuated over the past few weeks. We've been covering that here on the show. All remaining troops will go to the left of the banks of the Dnieper River, and this is the important part of this. Now you're separated by a river. And this is largely seen as sort of the symbolic way in which peace talks might unfold. Okay, move them across the Dnieper River, and then we would actually have maybe a discussion of peace. Okay, there we have the river separating us. Let's actually sit down at the table now. And the way that Russia is looking at this, according to sources I've been speaking to tonight, they're seeing this as a way of protecting their armor, and they're protecting their soldiers. And this is purely a military strategy move. It's not a political move. It's a military strategy move to pull soldiers back, pull their armament back, and they basically turned over the city. They've already taken down Russian flags. They have already removed their Russian flags from buildings. So this is going to be arguably Ukrainian territory again very, very soon. And then, as George points out, this may be the staging ground for where they then try to lob attacks into Crimea. And if they do that, of course, then they will be met with massive, massive casualties and massive resistance from Russia attacking them.
I mean, think of the people who just lived in that area, though, that their house now has gone from Ukraine to Russia to Ukraine again, and now is just complete war zone,
right,
in the most literal sense. And that's just so awful to think about.
So it's interesting, Eva Bartlett talking tonight about this and saying, this is going to be looked upon perhaps. They'll spin it as like a major sort of political blow for Russia. That's what they'll say. And I think that this is going to be an interesting way to look at how. Just thinking about all these different moving pieces with Kherson and how this unfolds over the next few days. But it's going to be, you're going to see it in Western newspapers that this is a retreat for Russia. This is a political win for Ukraine. But there's one important point, though, I think that is being lost in all of this, which is that now Ukraine has nowhere else to it. Like, they can't advance and have a major win. like on the field, on the battlefield at this point.
Because
now
of
they're
the river,
separated
is
by
that
a
what you
river.
mean? Yeah.
They're separate. So this is, I think I saw earlier tonight Brian Berletic saying that like this is a great point, that this is the moment now where you have this is the last major offensive that could have been captured by Ukraine, could have captured Russian armament in a major attack. So now they've literally removed this from their chessboard. So then what comes in the next few weeks when the ground freezes? That's anybody's guess at this point, I guess. Well, we'll see. So that's the very latest on that. All right, we've got more news to get to here on this Wednesday. Should we talk about Sean Penn? Let's do it.
You want to talk about Sean Penn right now? Yes. Okay. David, you have the appetite to talk about Sean Penn.
If you don't want to do it, we can do something else. But
no.
Okay.
But okay. Do you want to tell us how you feel about the story before we hit on this?
Me personally, yeah, I just feel like, you see pandering. Like, pandering is one thing, but this is like a whole new level of pandering that I've never seen. And I was just like, I literally, the whole video had my teeth clenching. I was physically cringing at this video.
Yeah. So, okay. I think, because it's not clear to me, that the Western media and the American propaganda war machine wants you to be inspired by this. I tried to get my empathy out for it, and I just couldn't get there. So let me tell you the story. Actor Sean Penn gave Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky his Oscar trophy as a keepsake to hold on to during the war. There's so much symbolism here to unpack, and we're going to try. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just really quick. Do we know what movie Oscar it was for? You know how he wins it for a certain thing? Okay.
Doesn't he only win?
Does he have more than one?
Fast Times at Ridgemont. I don't know.
Didn't he only win for Mystic River? I think that's the only one he has.
Oh, well, if that's the case, then.
I think so. I don't know. Okay. I mean, I'm not like a Sean. I mean, I have my Sean Penn autobiography that I like to read every night.
I was just going to see, if he's trying to make a statement, is he giving it for Mystic River or Fast Times at Ridgemont High? Because Fast Times at Ridgemont, I would argue, would be more valuable. So I was just trying to put a value on, what he's willing to actually get rid of.
So, if you read the newsletter, that I'm not super keen on pop culture. I got the Backstreet Boys wrong this week, and I'm sorry about that. So I am going to go out on a limb and say I don't think Fast Times at Ridgemont High was an Oscar-winning film.
No, I don't think so either.
So don't quote me on that. But let's watch this Oscar-winning performance, and you tell me if you find it inspiring or something else.
Hi, Sean. Nice to meet you. Great to see you. Great to see you. You're looking good. Oh, thank you.
This is for you.
Oh, Sean.
Yes.
No.
Please.
That is yours.
No, I feel terrible outside. it's just a symbolic, silly thing.
Yes, but
if I know this is here with you, then I'll feel better and stronger for the fight.
So great honor, but until we win.
When you win, bring it back to Malibu.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Because I'll feel much better knowing there's a piece of me here.
We have to
bring it back to Malibu, where you have a house.
some moment which is very important. It's not from me. It's from Ukraine. And it's more than only from me. Yeah, please.
President of Ukraine for outstanding story. Thank you.
Is that David Arkenstone?
I actually thought he lived in Marin.
Vangelis?
Because he did for a while.
Vangelis providing the soundtrack?
Like the guy from The Truman Show?
It's like a 5-camera shoot. Can I see your green screen?
No, this part, though, is especially
The first man who was here was this guy. I think you know him. Sean Penn. That is the day. And here you can read, if you don't know this guy, that is a great honor today.
There are 3 places in the world that all the pride of my life will be. The place where my daughter was born, the place where my son was born, and this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you so much. We're proud to know you, and thank you.
All right, we can stop it there.
Thank you.
We don't. That's all you're about. You're being willing to.
I think I just vomited in my mouth a little bit.
So the significance of that date is that Sean Penn was in Ukraine when the advancement from Russia began, because he was already working on a documentary about Zelensky. And so he was there. And so the date is just, which is so interesting. If you're a Ukrainian person and you're like, this war that disrupted my entire life started on February 24th. But sure, let's put Sean Penn's name on that date, because that also happened.
We had time to go and get some steel made, because we don't need that for tanks or anything. We had time to go to a forgery and make a giant plate to build our in the center square.
To just put it, and you can see that it's not like a Hollywood Walk of Fame. There was no other plaques in that plaza. It's a very strange thing. We are told that the war is really heating up right now. Why is there space and time for this? Well, if you're really like heads down, planning a war and calculating other people's lives, then how is this possible? Also, Sean Penn's an American citizen. The State Department has marked Ukraine as a level 4 out of 4. Do not travel. This is just a screenshot from today. An American citizen going to the U.S. State Department and inputting travel going to Ukraine. It's a level 4 red, do not travel, meaning it's dangerous there. So is that not applicable to celebrities if they contribute to state media's
maybe
goals?
No, it's propaganda.
Yeah, maybe that only is not private planes. It's like public transportation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're part of the propaganda army, if you were a part of Hollywood going there with 20 cameramen to shoot the beauty, and shooting with multiple angles and all of this stuff, and it's all propaganda. So Hollywood has a clear propaganda mechanism to go.
Right. Yeah. I remind you, Hollywood had all kinds of passes for the pandemic. They didn't have to lock down. Saturday Night Live could have a live studio audience. Hollywood actors apparently can go right past State Department do not travel warnings. So, all right for some, if you want to take a nice trip to Ukraine this time of year.
Also, just the Hollywood, the Oscar piece of this, right? Can we talk about that for a second? Which to me, it's like you talked about the symbolism. It is symbolic because this whole thing is theater. It's all a Hollywood production. This whole war, all of the propaganda has been propaganda from the very beginning. So him handing out a Oscar statue is just. You are winning the award for the best actor in all of this.
Yeah, yes. Zelensky was an actor. So,
right, that's the thing that I feel.
Penn,
go ahead. You Googled it.
I was going to say Sean Penn won Best Actor in 2009 and 2004. So he has 2 Best Actor.
He's got a
Oscars.
spare.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, see, this is not his only one. So he'll take the other one to Putin, I presume.
Couldn't have given the other one to his wife or something? To Zelensky's wife? Come on, man. Cheapskate.
Right. Now, I remind you that he is a former actor. And so what he's giving is he's saying this is a silly, symbolic thing to another actor. So if it's so silly and symbolic, why travel across the globe to give it to a politician who's leading his country into war? To me, it seems to highlight that Zelensky was an actor, like from one actor to the next. Like, you didn't win this because you went on to be a politician, but it's something you aspired to. I feel like that's an unintended consequence to remind us all that these are 2 actors in this sort of simulation of reality. Now, he says, if you keep this, then I will feel better and strong enough for the fights. I just wonder what fights Sean Penn has exactly, that he needs the strength to keep his talisman in the possession of Zelensky. Like, why?
I'll feel better in my fights. I'll feel better in my fights if you have my Oscar in Kiev.
Right. I'm confused about that.
I feel pretty inspired by it. I think I'm actually going to, I have a bunch of pool trophies. I'm going to go give Zelensky one of my pool trophies. I don't know if he plays pool, but
I have I have one of my
first place trophies I can give him.
I mean, every summer I win a gold
journalism trophy over here somewhere.
Clayton won New York's Funniest Reporter. You can give him that. Every summer in our elementary school, I win a gold medal for the Reading Olympics. So I can give that up to
the Reading Olympics.
I would not give that up. It's too valuable for me. I work really hard for that. Also, I think that, this visit by high-profile actors, it only seems to reinforce the notion that the war is full-on propaganda, because we are being invited to believe that Zelensky is a heroic figure for people who act and live in fictitious worlds.
Right.
And this is punctuated when he says, bring it later to Malibu. Like, Malibu is the pinnacle of inaccessible reality for most people.
He said, bring it back to Malibu. So
yes.
My thought was, Zelensky's just going to go visit one of his mansions, one of his own mansions.
Well, he says, when it's over, bring it back to Malibu. And it reminds me of that movie, Malibu's Most Wanted, where all these rich kids just simply cannot get in touch with reality. There's this funny scene in the movie where one kid's talking about when you can't quite make the grade, or, you can't afford lunch money. And the guy's like, yeah, the public all up in your private beach. This is the kind of problem that they think is a real problem, that it's so out of touch. Just like this is more out of touch and more tone deaf than the other celebrity visits that we've seen. Just in August, Jessica Chastain went and posed for this photo with Zelensky.
And she was there, of course, right around the time when the new Jurassic Park rolled out.
Okay.
Right. So it's like they go there to do these photo shoots. It's like a junket for Hollywood.
So now if Sean Penn launches a movie, all of a sudden that he's directing, we're going to be like, aha.
Exactly.
Okay,
This is the new movie promotion.
She's not in Jurassic Park.
Oh, then who's...
You're thinking of Bryce Howard. Bryce Dallas Howard.
Oh.
The other redhead.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, this was not, hadn't, maybe it had to do with Jurassic Park, but...
I just searched YouTube too, and I was hoping that I would find a Princess Buttercup reacts video to this, but I did not find one. So,
I'll have to show you. Our daughter Ava was Princess Buttercup for Halloween one year, and it was the cutest. Don't give me the opportunity to tell you how cute my kids are, because I'll get derailed. Let's talk about Ben Stiller. He also came and told Zelensky that he was his hero. So I think this begs the bigger question is, should celebrities have a starring role in global politics? Or is this a distraction? Now, Zelensky's Twitter account said that these famous people visits are extremely valuable because they allow the world to hear, know, and understand the truth about what is happening in our country. I feel the opposite. I feel like it shows the world that, your celebrity is high. Mm-hmm. And it's juxtaposed by other celebrities. This is not how we take wars with, let's say, Bashar al-Assad or any other, leader of a war-torn country. We don't think that they have time to be posing for Vogue and that kind of thing. I feel like it's inviting us to be inspired while also pulling back the curtain to show how much propaganda there is. And also, I think that it's a distraction from the actual human cost of lives that are being lost at this point, that, we can sort of set this aside and walk around with so many cameras. I think what would be more genuine is for Sean Penn to say, I love the Ukrainian people so much. You must come to peace and stop the death right now.
Yeah, here, I'll give you this. I'll give you this little trophy, this little Oscar, if you demand peace.
Right. Instead, it's like, hold on to this, little amulet I've got here, keep fighting. And when the war is over, we'll have some, gin and tonics in Malibu, all up in my private beach.
Well, and I actually think I could get on board with it and feel some feels if they would actually send some A-list actors that could actually act in these videos, not these C-listers that are stumbling over words and
send DiCaprio.
Well, right? There is sort of
DiCaprio could have, if I watched DiCaprio do that, I'd have been like, we're in. That's
no,
all.
you
He's
wouldn't.
Here's my arm full of Oscars and my Emmys.
You would have changed your Twitter handle to a Ukrainian flag. You would have been like, wow.
Yep.
I'm feeling it.
DiCaprio's in. I'm there.
But there is something kind of awkward dad about him, where he's like, it's just like where my kids were born, where my wife pushed out babies is just as symbolic as this metal piece of slab. And I was like, where'd you come up with that? That's just, I guess what is he supposed to say?
The three most important things in my life, right? Where my son was born, where my daughter was born, and this metal piece of slab that says I was stood on this spot.
It's got this sort of this is my legacy, sad Willy Loman type character about it that I understand. So I want to leave space for people who might be inspired by this, because I am not one of them. More, it makes me, it highlights the fact that this is all propaganda.
Yeah.
If you found it inspiring, please tell us why.
All right, we've got more news to get to here, and we're going to talk about is math racist in a second. And we'll just hang it out there. You tell us, is math racist? But first, tell you about our friends over at Indeed. Because when you're hiring for your business, there's usually a choice. Hire fast or hire well. But what if you want to do both, then you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Now, one thing that's great about Indeed is that you can, when you post these jobs, you're getting the right people that are attracted to your job posting. So it's not like you're having to sift through all kinds of stuff out there that's not relevant to your job posting. The screening and assessment, so you can really figure out and filter who's best. Choose the right one right from that simple grading system. They use 135 grading assessment tests that they can take from cooking to coding, and you get a better assessment of what your job candidate looks like. Indeed helps you see top talent's abilities in a flash by adding any of those 135 graded assessment tests to your job posts. So join 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So, need to hire? You need Indeed. Visit Indeed.com/redacted to start hiring right now. Just go to Indeed.com/redacted. That's Indeed.com/redacted. Terms and conditions apply.
All right. Is math racist? Liberals want you to believe that you are racist by telling you that your love of math is racist. The argument goes, I'm going to talk you through it, what we are supposed to collectively sort of confess to our sins about being a lover of math. I am a lover of math. And then we can all collectively repent for liking math. The argument goes that math is racist because it is elitist and privileged, and it values logic over emotion. And apparently those are racist tenets.
Oh, because we're not allowed to just use logic anymore.
No.
So you cannot use logic. Okay, whether it's climate, whether it's crime, whether it's anything, you have to go with emotion for your answers.
And I just want to know, like, non-racist, like, can you be someone of color and also like logic? Or are people, by this logic, are people of color only emotional?
You're not supposed to use logic. You have to use
like
emotion.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's not.
I was just going to say, what about Neil deGrasse Tyson? Is he just out? I don't understand. Shouldn't that just like implode in on itself?
Right.
The fact that he exists.
What about Spock?
I don't know what that has to do with anything.
Logic.
Well, I acknowledge that emotion does play a part in math. A lot of math scores are tested on different emotions. I'm going to talk about that later. But is it productive to politicize math in the name of progress? A group of British math professors are saying no, negative, absolute value, 0. Right? See what I did there?
I like that.
The professors.
That's a math joke.
I like math jokes. I can tell you a lot of them. No, I won't.
No, you don't.
Okay. I read a book recently on innumeracy, and I was telling Clayton all of these funny jokes, and he was like, "That's really stupid." Let me just tell my joke about the. Okay.
All right.
A couple in their 90s goes to a divorce lawyer and decides to get a divorce. And the divorce lawyer says, well, after all these years of marriage, why not just stick it out? And they said, we wanted to wait until the kids died. It's a funny joke, right?
That's pretty good.
Do you like that one? That's about probability and numbers? Okay. Okay, there's more where that came from. No more math jokes. I'll save them till the end.
I'm going to be here all night.
Okay. Or another funny joke. The guy says that a lot of times he goes to like buy a car and the salesman says, oh, it's only a fraction of the cost. And he says, is that fraction 4/3? That one gets me every time. Is that fraction 4/3?
Tip your waiters.
Okay. Back to the Philip, you didn't even chuckle. That hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
Well, my microphone was muted. Sorry, I was laughing.
Okay.
I was laughing a lot. But
Feel free to tell your daughter.
He was laughing so much that it almost...
It's the fraction 4/3.
That's really good.
Okay, back to the professors. They are begging schools to keep politics out of math and just do their jobs. They are addressing new guidance for benchmarks for the Quality Assurance Agency, the QAA, for MSOR. It's Math, Statistics, and Operational Research. I'm just going to call it math standards. The standards were written in a very progressive way. Some of it seems reasonable enough. It's asking math professors to make allowances for people who are caregivers, be flexible with deadlines for people who are parents or people who have disabilities, use a hybrid online-offline approach. But then some of it seems like it was, in fact, written by the woke mob. For example, the admonition on diverse curriculum, shown here, it says, where possible, you should present the work of a diverse group, and students should be made aware of problematic issues in the development of MSOR content. They are being taught, for example, some pioneers of statistics supported eugenics. Some mathematicians had connections to the slave trade, racism, or Nazis. Students should be educated in general, diverse matters, and also those that are specifically relevant to MSOR, such as the need to consider diversity in data collection and analysis. So basically, not only are we teaching, famously, like IBM was one of the worked for the Nazis, and a lot of their sort of data analysis progress came from that era. So I guess we're supposed to talk about not just how math has developed, but where it was used for nefarious reasons. Is that productive, given the fact that we have so few mathematicians right now and a numeracy is at an all-time low? Do we really need to stop and talk about these things? It's an interesting question. Also,
can I chime in on that? But that's equating, because math was used in bad things. I'm pretty sure somebody used a screwdriver to put together Fat Man and Little Boy. Should we be going after those as well? I mean, that is such a stretch. That just kind of blew my mind. Sorry.
Yeah,
it blew my mind too. Thank you for that.
The tools that are used to kill millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people. So no one can use a screwdriver anymore or a riveter anymore.
Or even the written word, because wars were waged. Wars were raged.
The written word. The written word and the wars were waged.
Okay. Then we can't use pens because that, okay.
We should just ban that phrase. Written words and wars that are waged.
Okay, that went wrong. Let's talk about
it's a lot of
guidance on who to hire and recruit. It stings of affirmative action. So providers should make an effort to present visible, diverse role models, attract diverse staff in all roles, and assure a suitable working environment for all. Also, recruitment. Admission decisions should acknowledge the variety of qualifications applicants have and consider opportunities for those without these standards, right? Of course, providing a diverse faculty is great, but not if it is at the expense of hiring the best mathematicians. So do you want a less talented but more diverse math faculty, or simply the best math faculty? I think Vivek Ramaswamy makes the point that a racially diverse group does not necessarily mean diversity of thought. He says the best way to achieve diversity of thought on a corporate board is to simply screen candidates for the diversity of their thoughts. But these days we seem unable to do that without looking at the diversity of someone's skin color.
Right. I was speaking recently to a high-level someone in Hollywood who will remain nameless. And this person was explaining how during the pandemic there was this big move in Hollywood to go woke, right? And to move towards, we've got to make sure that this movie is written by a person of color, that this person is, that there's this many women on the board. Right. This person is the screenwriter here. Okay, we've got a trans person doing this now. We've got a black person doing this. We've got a Latino person doing this, whatever. And what they found found is that then they were having to, a lot of these film companies were having to go back and bring the same writers that they've been using for years who were highly skilled, regardless of their skin color, but a lot of them happen to be white. Unfortunately, I guess.
Because experience matters. And the problem is, how do we give people experience? That is a question to be addressed, but you don't sort of skip over experience in order to just achieve an end of racial diversity, right, is the point.
So all of these skilled people who had been screenwriting or involved in production for years were then having to be called in to fix all of the problems with this woke screenplays and all of the problems, like literally directors filming movies that were totally garbage. They had to come back and fix all of this. They had to come back and do all of that.
Yes. Well, back to math. The math guidelines then go on to say that math should teach about sustainability, as in math needs to prove climate change, and that should be the focus. Math can't just prove what it proves. It has to have a social agenda. Take a look at this. Math has a role to play in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Should it? Really? Like, we're giving them that goal, underpinning many technological, scientific, and digital developments, which have potential to improve health, drive economic growth, transform societies, and enhance environment. For instance, they can inform models of climate change and stuff. But what if these projects prove that climate alarmism is unfounded? Can they still get funding or be presented in academia? This is troubling, and it's very leading that your math has to then be focused on sustainability and prove these things in the United Nations climate models. Also, math must concede that math itself is bad for the planet. Take a look at this. Consideration of ethical issues and unintended consequences of math, such as the environmental impact of high-performance computing, or the use of pure areas such as graph theory in controversial and social media practices. So, okay. This is a part of a larger attempt to deconstruct math. The narrative goes that math is racist and hegemonic because it is a Western construct, and it leaves out other ways of knowing things that can't be quantified. There is two branches of science called the quantifiable and the qualifiable. So qualifiable research does have a place in academia, but they're going after the quantifiable, saying this can't exist because it is. Do you have a reaction to that, Philip, before we go on?
I mean, oh my God, do I have a reaction? Okay, so like my understanding, so math is basically, you can look at it several ways, but it's basically like a language for like problem solving and logic, and it's a tool to sort of like to make applicable that language. So I mean, it does serve a purpose. Like everything they're describing in this is basically political.
Yeah.
So math is just the tool. I mean, it does still apply, like the screwdriver and the atom bomb. Like it still applies. Like it doesn't matter what tool they're using. It's just political what they're trying to do.
Yes.
You can't blame the tool for how it's used. You know, like I can pick up a hammer and hit somebody with it. That doesn't make the hammer a bad tool. You know,
or racist,
should be banned.
Or sexist,
or racist. Yeah. It just matters what I did with it.
Right.
So yeah, I'm following along this, and I'm just getting, you know, letting my rage build up a little bit.
So how widespread is this? Is this British group?
No. So from Douglas Murray's book, War on the West, he talks about this entire war on math and specifically how it came into a crescendo in 2020 when the appetite was high for racial justice. He talks about, I'm just going to read you this part because I know this is it's a crappy screenshot, you guys, but I'm just going to read it to you so you know it's not mine. One example of what anti-racist math might look like emerged like so much else in the summer of 2020. During those months, several math people in the teaching profession attempted to deconstruct one of the foundations of mathematics, indeed of logic itself, namely the fact that 2 + 2 = 4. According to these educators, that statement is not true. 2 plus 2 does not equal 4. While 2 plus 2 can equal 4, it can also allegedly add up to other numbers, including 5.
What?
For some reason, perhaps to do with absolutely everything being caught up in a culture war, a crowd of people swiftly latched on to this claim. Others claimed that it was obvious that 2 plus 2 cannot equal 4 and gave a variety of reasons. These included, but were not limited to, claims that 2 plus 2 is 4 is part of a hegemonic narrative, that the people who make such narratives should not get to decide what is true, that 2 plus 2 should equal whatever people want it to be, and that making such a definitive statement excludes other ways of knowing. As the movement gathered force, one PhD candidate took to social media to declare that the idea of 2 plus 2 equaling 4 is cultural. And because of Western imperialism and colonialism, we think of it as the only way of knowing. An ethnic studies math teacher at Washington State called on people to attack the haters by proving that there are ways to make 2 plus 2 equal 5. Soon, a biostatistics PhD at Harvard was trying to help out by saying these numbers are quantitative measures and abstractions of real understanding things in the universe, and it's important to keep track of this whenever we use numbers to model the real world, which cleared things up. Scores of other people, notably math teachers, took to social media to try to help out. Some people described the idea of 2 plus 2 equaling 4 as a simplification of reality, but the main aim of the activist teacher was clear: to sock it to white supremacists by proving that 2 plus 2 does not equal 4. Okay? That is irrelevant. And it's also very punishing to people who are actually trying to succeed within a framework of logic and math. But at least now we have some math teachers who are saying, leave us out of this. The professors that we spoke of at the beginning of this segment said that they abhor racism, but one can abhor racism without subscribing to the theory of decoloniality. They say that the theory of decoloniality is a postmodern critique of the European paradigm of rational knowledge. We believe that history suggests that mathematics is not a particularly European paradigm. They're like, when did we ever say this, right? On the contrary, there are many examples where the same mathematical ideas have been developed independently across cultures. It's just one example. The mathematician, Japanese mathematician Seki, or is it Seki? I'm not sure. And the Swiss mathematician Bernoulli both studied what are now called Bernoulli numbers. We agree that where practical, the mathematical community should use terminology that gives non-Western mathematicians proper credit, but that's not the meaning of decoloniality. So the worry is that mandating a diverse teaching of math will lead to a skewed perspective on the history of mathematics, seen entirely through this woke lens of decoloniality. And basically they're like, just leave us out of it. Just let us, leave us be. Go to your qualifiable sciences if that's what you'd like.
Well, yeah, I hope so. We hear more from these teachers or more of these teachers stand up for this, because this is absurd. I wonder if we could get away with this at the IRS, like on my taxes. I'm sorry.
I know you think this leads up to this tax bill, but sorry, that's racist of you to say.
What I actually owe is 0. Like, I know you might think that 2 plus 2. You know what? That's what I'm going to do. If you, the IRS, think that 2 plus 2 equals 4, I'm going to tell you that it equals 0. And if you disagree with me, then I'm going to call you a racist.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me scared, because that makes me wonder, what math are they going to teach the 86,000 new IRS agents? This math or real math?
Woke math. What do we call this? Woke math?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what George Orwell warned of. Just put up this screen if you don't mind. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 plus 2 equals 4. If that is granted, all as follows. Well, we are no longer given that freedom. We must now take away what we think is subjective reality and hand it to someone else and say, oh, okay, then I know nothing. Then you can deconstruct who I am completely.
So I mean, there's a famous example. There's a famous, where NASA had sent a probe to Mars, and as it was approaching and it was going to land, they overshot Mars and lost hundreds of millions of dollars in this project. And the reason for that is because there was a simple unit conversion that somebody did wrong, and so a decimal place ended up in the wrong spot. So like you can call the numbers whatever you want, and I can understand like that concept that 2 could be anything, but it's what it represents is pretty damn important, because if those don't all line up and the calculation doesn't work, you miss Mars.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't woke your way out of math.
Well,
It's
yeah.
going.
And
It exists.
Yes.
If you're measuring bungee cords in buildings, that's pretty important.
Bungee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or,
Exactly.
I mean, even the binary that makes your phone work, right? Then you have to say, oh, these things are not concrete. And so then you got to give up your phone because it's math and engineering.
Right.
You have to give up a lot of things.
Number.
Yeah, let's see if you tell your construction team about your support beam, like how much do you want it to weigh, how big, doesn't matter.
Do you guys remember
right?
why? You guys remember the panic over Y2K and how we were so concerned about? We were so concerned about those extra. It was a decimal place essentially, right?
Yeah.
That's what we were concerned about. That we didn't have. And so we were worried that the world's computers were going to shut down.
Well, I want to say that there is a concern that students of color and women don't do as well in math than maybe white males. But if you want that to change, you don't deconstruct math. You put structures in place to help those populations.
Right. Like the people that were during the pandemic, the 12 million kids that didn't have internet access, like it's not because of math. It's because that they are impoverished. So put some structures in place that help those people.
Right. Or change some of the messaging around math. I was just reading a book this week called Untangled about raising adolescent girls. Fabulous book. Anyone who has teenagers or is about to. And they did a study where they gave students of equal math ability and equal math grade tests, and half of the students were told these tests usually have gendered results, meaning one gender does better than the other. And they told another group did not get that message at all. They just took the test. In the group that was told that the genders did differently, girls scored much lower than boys. And they weren't even told that it was supposed to be girls. They just said there's a gendered difference because girls internalized it and they said, wow, this must be harder. I must not have been as prepared. And girls scored lower with just these subliminal messages. So absolutely, emotion plays a role in math. But I don't think that dismantling math is going to advantage anybody.
No, zero people.
Well, the thing is, like
Yeah,
we've seen with everything else, once you... Sorry, can you guys hear me? It looked like I was muted. Once you dismantle something like this and everybody gets on board, then where else does it go? Then it's the English language. Then it's this. Then it's that. And it's just like, because so many things now that because we've opened these little doors, they've become, floods of this crazy stuff coming down the pipe. And it's because we didn't say anything when it was still back here.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Philip?
I was going to say, like, I am all for, like, changing the way we teach math so that it's not taught as, like, an ability that you have, but a skill that you can learn. And just that simple little trick, like, really opens the door to a lot of people because then they realize it's just about practice. It's just about repetition. So, like, when my daughter was in third grade, I got into an argument with her third grade teacher because she was able to do the math, but he's like, she's just not fast enough. She needs to be memorizing this stuff. And my argument was like, she's not an astronaut having to recalculate like landing trajectory as she's hitting the atmosphere. She doesn't need to do math fast. Nobody needs to do math fast.
What does
I was like,
speed
calm
have
down
to do
about
with
that.
anything?
Yeah, it doesn't. It's like results matter, accuracy matters. So it's like, I still think there's a lot of carryover where math is seen as rote memorization. And that's just, that annoys me to no end. So it's like, I'm all about changing how we educate on math.
But none of this is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm even for like changing some of the scientific narrative behind even things like DNA, where you have like Watson and Crick, where they're given the credit for like discovering the double helix when it was actually like female like her name escapes me because the only one who ever hear is Watson and Crick, where it's like I'm all for going back and kind of like bringing the people that contributed back into the conversation, but you can't mess with the math. So, sorry.
You can't mess with the numbers.
I was held back in school because of math. I almost failed math class and would not have graduated if it weren't for a math teacher that helped me. And I wish like they could have taught me just how to do like tip waiters and waitresses, how to balance a checkbook. And that's pretty much all I needed. I didn't need to know algebra. I don't think I've ever used it. But I had to painstakingly try to learn that. And my head just did not get it.
Yeah, I get really upset when people say that stuff around my children, that like, oh, I'm not a math person, because that tends to be very reinforcing for children. And in fact, children who have heard, especially girls who have heard their mothers say, oh, go to your dad, or I'm not a math person, or I did terrible in math. Almost all of them, their math scores precipitously drop because of those messages that it's just a talent and not just something that you can practice. And so there's a lot that we absolutely can improve around the conversation around math. I don't think any of this is that.
Let us know your thoughts on this in the chat below. And we have a daily newsletter we would love for all of you to subscribe to. If you go to redacted.inc, you can sign up. Again, totally free. And you just put in your email address, type it out, click on the sign up for newsletter there, and it'll be delivered to your inbox first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee if you're on the East Coast of the United States. If we are in Western Europe, and so you might receive it around lunchtime, or maybe at nighttime if you live in New Zealand or Japan or some other, I guess, what time is it in Japan right now? Anybody watching us from Japan?
I don't know.
Probably not. I would think it's
what time is it in Japan right now?
Probably like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning or something, right? 6 in the morning?
It's almost 8 a.m.
Oh, okay. Maybe you're waking up now and you'll get the newsletter a day later.
Yeah, surely somebody's awake in Japan right now.
You're in the future in Japan. So anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up there. Do we have any super chats we want to get to before we get out of here? Just give us a few. Pick 3 good ones here that we've got.
We do. Okay. 3 good ones. Open House, Texas. Something seems very fishy about Russia leaving the area. Is it possible there's a more cynical move behind this once Ukraine soldiers begin to move back in?
Yes, that is the one part of this. Could be, is this a trap? You know, they move out of the way, and then of course these soldiers move in, and then they hit them with air. They hit them with air power. So that could be very well be. We'll see.
Ivan Shestvalov, language differences equals den Rus dinip ukura. Oh, I thought that would be a good one, but I can't even read it.
Yeah, I saw it, but I think you have to concentrate on it because it moved too fast. I apologize.
Stephen Fava Mogstad, they are using an awful lot of math expression to make them self-understood.
Oh, so Ivan was talking about language differences. The Dnieper River. Dnieper, and so between the Russian version, Dnieper, and Dnieper from the Ukrainian version, and Zaporizhia, Russian version, or Zaporozhia. So I guess the slight differences there, but I'm still butchering them, I'm sure.
And I'm not quite sure, maybe we're a little late in the game to be asking, like, you know, when you have a friend and you should have asked their name a long time ago and now it's too late.
Right.
Why is Zelensky sometimes have 2 Ys and sometimes doesn't?
Yeah.
Does anybody know that?
Or Donbas sometimes has 2 S's and sometimes doesn't.
Maybe it's a lost in translation type thing.
Or just a translation to English, or the English version of it. Because I'll see some publications will put the Zelensky with 2 Ys, and then others will only publish 1 Y. And it must be just an editorial choice by those publications.
Maybe there's a reason. For instance, that Elena Zelenska has the female version of Zelensky. So if anybody knows, I'm all ears.
And then the last one from Stan CK, Wade, both great actors. I think he's referring to Zelensky and Penn.
I think so too.
I disagree. I don't think they were, good acting. But.
Miriam Staten says Dnieper is pronounced the same in either. Miriam says, okay. Yeah. I don't know. All right, everyone. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today on the old show. We really, really appreciate it. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Colonel Douglas McGregor is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about the very latest in China and Taiwan. And we'll have some other great content for you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So we will see you then. Much love to all of you. And good morning to you in Japan. Bye.